We continue now at the top of Daf Tesam Beis Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 89b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara brought the opinion of Rav, and Rav said that when it comes to the get and when it comes to the Ksuba, they each collect a different portion of the Ksuba payment. By producing the get, she collects the main, the 100 or 200 dinars of the Ksuba, and by producing the Ksuba, so then she collects any Tosefes, any additional amount that was written into the Ksuba. And so the question was that the Mishnah said that let's say the woman produces the Ksuba and not the get, so the Mishnah said she can't collect on the basis of just the ksuba. And the Gemara said, according to Shmuel, it makes sense, because if she collects just on the basis of the ksuba, so then maybe a different time she'll collect only on the basis of the get. But the Gemara says, according to Rav, who holds that each one collects something different, so then what's the issue over here in the Mishnah? Why is it that she can't collect anything when she produces only the ksuba? Let her collect the tosefes. And again, if she produces the get at a different time, then she'll only collect the main portion of the ksuba. And so the Gemara answered, no, according to Rav, that end of the Mishnah is talking specifically where she produces the ksuba, but she doesn't even have witnesses that she's a divorcee. We don't even know that she's divorced. So therefore, since he can argue, since he can argue that she's not even a divorcee, he's also able to argue that I did divorce her and I already gave her the ksuba, and that's why she cannot collect on the basis of the ksuba document alone if she does not produce the get. But the Gemara continues, one second, Hamida Katani Seifa. But if we look at the end of the Mishnah, what does it say at the end of the Mishnah? It says, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Min hasakona ve'elach, when things became dangerous, from that time onward, meaning it was dangerous to hold things like a ksuba, it was dangerous to do mitzvahs. So Isha gova ksubasa shalo beget. So then already a wife is allowed to collect her ksuba without the get, because it makes sense that she wouldn't have the get. Ubalchov shalo bepruzbul. And similarly, a balchov, even if he doesn't have the pruzbul document, he can collect his debt as well. Now that part of the Mishnah, says the Gemara, b'di'ika eidei gerish and askinon. That part of the Mishnah has to be that there were witnesses that she's actually a divorcee. There have to have been witnesses that she was divorced. Otherwise, how can she collect if we don't even know that she's divorced? De'ileka eidei gerishin, because if there's not even witnesses that she's divorced, b'mai gavya, so how is she collecting with the ksuba without a get? There's no evidence again that she's divorced. And so the Gemara says, according to Rav, we'll have to answer as follows: Elakula Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. You'll have to say, according to Rav, the entire Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. V'chisure mechsra v'achi katani. There are words missing in the Mishnah, and it should read as follows: Harei elu lo yiparu. Again, if the woman produces her ksuba without the get, then in such a situation, the husband does not have to pay. And when is that true? That's if there are no witnesses that she was divorced. But if there are witnesses that she was divorced, so now already she has this ksuba document and we know that she's a divorcee, so gavya tosefes, so then she can collect the additional part of the ksuba, because again, according to Rav, the ksuba collects the tosefes, ve'ikar, and when it comes to the main part of the ksuba, imifka gita gavya, if she brings out her get, then she can collect, ve'lo mifka gita lo gavya, and if she doesn't bring out the get, she cannot collect. And the Gemara continues, the Mishnah then finishes off, and from the time of danger and onward, then, even if she doesn't produce a get, she's able to collect. Because Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, when it comes from the time of danger and onward, that a wife is allowed to collect her ksuba without a get, and a balchov, he can collect also his debt without a pruzbul. And the Gemara continues, Amri le Rav Kahana v'Ravasi l'Rav. So Rav Kahana and Ravasi, they said to Rav as follows: L'didach Amrit get gova ikar. According to you, that you say that when a woman has a get, she can collect the main part of the ksuba. That's what the get document is able to collect. So almona min hanesu, and what if you have a situation of a widow? She was a married woman and she's a widow. She doesn't have a get. But my gavya, so how is she going to collect the main part of the ksuba? She doesn't have a get with which to collect. And the Gemara answers, Be'edei Misa. The Gemara says, well, she'll be able to collect the ksuba when she produces witnesses that her husband died. That's going to be the way she collects. But the Gemara says, one second, but why aren't we concerned with the following scenario? Dilma Girsha, maybe he really did divorce her, so she does have a get. Umifka Lagita, and then she's going to take out the get, so she'll have witnesses that he died, and she'll also be able to take out a get. She'll be able to collect twice. Megavia Bey, she'll take out the get and collect. And so the Gemara answers, Biosheves Tachas Bala, the situation over here is when she is sitting by her husband, meaning when she's married, when we know she was married, so then the Eidei Misa, the witnesses that her husband died, that allows her to collect the ksuba. But otherwise, if we don't know that she was married, then indeed we do have such a concern that she'll collect based on the Eidei Misa, and then again she'll take out the get and collect the second time. We would not allow her to collect with Eidei Misa in such a situation. But the Gemara says, V'dilma samach l'misa girsha, but maybe very close to his death, he divorced her, so we know she was Yosheves Tachas Bala, or at least we believe she was Yosheves Tachas Bala, and will allow her to collect with the Eidei Misa, but then you'll have a problem, because right before his death, he divorced her, and she has a get, she'll be able to collect the second time. And so to that, the Gemara says, "Iuhu da'afsid an nafshi." In such a situation, a man divorces his wife, and a rare occurrence, but in such a situation, anytime a man divorces his wife, he should make sure people are aware of it, and therefore he himself has caused his own loss. And again, in the rare situation where he divorced her, and he did not inform others, that's his own loss. We do not take such a scenario into account. And again, as long as she was Yosheves Tachas Ba'ala, she can collect with the Yedei Misa. But the Gemara continues, Almana min ha'erisin. But what about when we talk about a widow from the erisin stage? She was betrothed, so there is no Yosheves Tachas Ba'ala in such a situation. But my Gavia, how is she collecting? Be'edei Misa. Again, she's going to have to produce witnesses that he died. But again, V'lecha Jadil Magirsha, Umifka Gita, we should be afraid that maybe he divorced her. She'll take out the get, V'gavia, and she'll collect the second time. And so to that, the Gemara answers, Ella rather, b'makom de lo efshar, in situations where there is no alternative, kasvin an shover, we certainly will write a receipt for the husband. In other words, if you have a situation where a ksuba is paid off, and there is a legitimate concern that she might be able to collect a second time, so in such a situation, we always will write a shover for the husband, as the receipt will serve as a proof that he paid off the ksuba, and she won't be able to collect the second time. And the Gemara says, Dilotei ma'achi, because if you don't say this, if you say that we never write a shover, that there's no scenario where we write a shover, so Eidei Misa Gufayu, when it comes to producing witnesses to the husband's death also, that should be a problem. Nechash Dilma Mifka Eidei Misa B'hai Beidina V'gavia, we should be afraid she'll produce witnesses to his death in a particular bezin and collect. V'hadar Mifka B'beidina Achrina V'gavia, then she'll produce witnesses in some other bezin and she'll be able to collect. Elavadai, rather, it must certainly be the case, B'makom de lo efshar kasvinan shover, in situations where there is no alternative, we will write a shover. In such situations where she gets paid off and there might be a real concern that she can collect a second time, so the husband will have a receipt to prove that he paid. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Mar Kashisha, Bereder Rav Chisda Rav Ashi, Mar Kashisha, the son of Rav Chisda, said to Rav Ashi, Almona min ha'erisin min nolan de isla ksuba. When it comes to a widow from the stage of erisin, how do we know that she's even entitled to a ksuba? Ilema meha, if you're going to say, it comes from the following. We learned as follows, Nesar malo unisgarsh, it says if a woman is widowed or divorced, bein min ha'erisin, bein min ha'nisuin, whether from the stage of erisin, whether from the stage of nisuin, go vesakol, she can collect the entire ksuba. So there we do seem to have a proof that by a situation of an almana, a widow from erisin, she gets a ksuba. But the Gemara says, no, dilma de kasavla. But maybe there we're talking about where it was he specifically wrote her a ksuba from the time of erisin. The Gemara says, v'chitema kasavla ma'ila meimer. Now the Gemara says, but maybe you'll say, if he wrote it for her, so then what's the chiddush? Of course she collects. No, it is a chiddush. La'afukim mid Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. It's a chiddush because it excludes the opinion. It goes against the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Diyamar, because Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, shelo kasavla el al minashu konsa. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, even if he wrote her the ksuba, the idea only is to write her the ksuba, the extra, meaning let's say the tosefes, was only on the condition that he was going to marry her. He doesn't intend to give her the extra from the ksuba if he doesn't actually marry her. And so therefore maybe that's all we're saying over here. We're saying Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says when it comes to the tosefes, so that she does not collect if she's not married. And the first Tana, the Tanakama, says no. By Nesarmula from the Erisin Goves Hakol, she collects the entire thing. And the Gemara even says, Dekanami will even bring a proof to this. To Katani Goves Hakol, it says she collects the entire thing. What are we talking about? If we're saying the entire thing is referring to the fact that he wrote for her, he stipulated for her an entire amount extra. Misham Hachi Goves Hakol. That's why it says she collects the entire thing. But if he didn't write anything for her, my Goves Hakol, what do you mean she collects everything? If it's just an automatic, we're talking about the automatic super payment that wasn't necessarily written in a document. It's only going to be the 100 or the 200. It's only going to be what the actual Tanai Bezin of Ksuba is, nothing extra. And so therefore the language of Goves Hakol implies that from the stage of erisin, he actually wrote her a Ksuba and there was extra money put into the Ksuba, and that's actually the Machlokas Tanakam and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. When we're at the stage of erisin and the Ksuba is written, does she get the entire thing, or does she only get the main amount of 100 or the 200? And so the Gemara continues, and rather the proof that when it comes to an arusa, she's entitled to a ksuba, even if a ksuba is not written. She's entitled to an automatic ksuba from the bezin, from the court. It comes from that which Rav Chia bar Avin taught, because he taught as follows, Ishto arusa, it says that, let's say a person has a wife, and his wife is just an arusa, they're not married, it's just the stage of betrothal, lo onin velo metamila, so he doesn't become an onin when she dies. Also, he's not metamid to her, let's say he's a kohen. Normally, a kohen can be metamid to his wife to take care of her burial. He does not, this is just an arusa. mezusa. V'chein hi, and similarly she, lo onenes v'lo metame lo, she doesn't become an onenes when he dies, and she also is not metame for him, meaning to say she's not chayeves to deal with him in terms of taking care of his burial. Mesa eino yarsha, let's say she dies, he doesn't inherit her. Mesu, if he dies, gova ksubasa, she does collect her ksuba, so it seems clear from this statement here, from this teaching of Rav Chia bar Rabin, that she does have a ksuba. And again, the Gemara answers the same way. Dilma de kasavla, maybe the cases where he wrote her a ksuba during the stage of Eretz. We're not talking about the automatic ksuba from the bezin. We're talking about what he wrote for her. And the Gemara continues. Now, if you're going to say that if he wrote it for her, so what's the chiddush? Of course, she gets the ksuba if the document was written. So no, it's a chiddush because Mesa eino yarshat strichale. The chiddush is that if she dies, even though he wrote her a ksuba, but the other way it doesn't work. The fact that she dies, he doesn't get to inherit her, even though he's giving her a ksuba when he dies. He doesn't inherit her when she dies. And the Gemara continues. Amar le Rav Nachman le Rav Huna. So Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, LeRav, according to Rav, the Omar get gova ikar, that he says again, according to Rav, the get document is used to collect the main part of the ksuba, and the ksuba is for the tosefes. So we have a different concern. Lechosh dilma mifka gita b'hai beidin, and we should be concerned. She'll take out her get in one bezin, v'gavian she'll collect. V'hadra mifka b'beidin achrina, then she'll go take her get to another bezin. V'gavian she'll collect the second time. V'chitema de karina lane. If you're going to say, oh, we'll just rip up the get, that's not going to work. Amra b'ina len suvei. She'll say, no, you can't rip up my get. I need the get to prove I'm a divorcee, so I can remarry. And so the Gemara says to that, very simple solution. We tear the get and we write on the back of the get, this get we tore up. Not because it's a get that is puzzle. We're just tearing it up in order that she doesn't use it to collect a second time. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Shnei Gittin Ushtei Ksubas. If you have a situation where a woman has 2 Gittin and she has 2 Ksubas, so the halacha is Go V'Shtei Ksubas. So if she's able to produce both of these documents, she can collect 2 Ksubas. She can collect 2 Ksubos. We're talking over here of a situation. Let's say she got married, she got divorced, and then she remarried the same person. So she has 2 Gittin from this individual, because then she got divorced after the second marriage as well, and she has 2 ksubas, so then she collects twice. Shtei ksubas v'get echad. Now let's say she has 2 documents written as a ksuba, but she only has 1 divorce document. O ksuba shnei gittin, or let's say she has a ksuba, but she has 2 divorce documents. O ksuba v'get v'misa, or let's say she has a ksuba, and then she has a get document, and she also has evidence that her husband died. So in such a situation, eina gova el ksuba achas. In such a situation, she's only entitled to collect 1 ksuba, not 2. Shahamegarish es ishto v'hechzira, because anytime a person divorces his wife and remarries her, al menas ksuba harishona machzira, really he's remarrying her on the assumption that she's just retaking her old ksuba. It's not a new ksuba that he's giving her. He's just saying, we're going to get remarried and go back to that old ksuba. And Rashi over here explains, Shnei gittin ushtei ksuba, zman rishona kodem lazman get rishon, so the time, the date of the first ksuba is before the first get. Uzman ksuba shnia kodem laget sheni, then there was a second ksuba that was written before the second get, so she has 2 ksubas, so go v'shtei ksuba, she can collect them both. Sharei girsha v'echzir v'chasav lo ksuba shnia. That's exactly what happened. He divorced her, he remarried her, he gave her a second ksuba, she gets both. Aval kidmu shtei ksubas laget rishon. Now Rashi points out, if the date on the 2 ksubas is before the first get, lo, then she can't collect twice. Sharei kashechzira lo kasav lo ksuba, because when he remarried her, he didn't give her a second ksuba, she only has 1. Utanan b'seifa, and that's what it says in the seifa, shtei ksubas v'get. Let's say she has 2 ksubas and a get, ein agova la'achas, she only collects 1. We assume that only one of the ksubas will be good. Lamadnim shakosiv lishto shtei ksubas ein agova la'achas. The point is, if a person writes for his wife, it's just one time, he writes her 2 ksubas, but one marriage, she's only going to collect once. V'imishum de'igrasha v'hadra, the fact that he went ahead and divorced and remarried her, hatanan ksuba shnei gitin ein la'achas. There also, it says that if she has a ksuba and 2 gets, that also she's only entitled to 1. Shalmanas ksuba rishona echzir, because he's only remarried her on the condition of the first ksuba. Shtei ksubas beget, let's say again, there's 2 ksubas and a get. Shekid mushtein leget, they were both before the get. Over Gemara mefarish lamai kasavlu, the Gemara explained, why would he write for 2 ksubas if it was all part of one marriage? Or ksuba ushnei gitin, or again, let's say there was 1 ksuba and 2 gitin. Ksuba benisun harishonim, like we just said, let's say there was a ksuba written for the first marriage. V'girsha v'echzir, he divorces her and he remarries her. V'lo kasavla ksuba, he doesn't write her a second ksuba. V'chazav v'girsha, then he divorces her again. So again, it's al menas ksuba harishona. So in all of these situations, she's going to collect 1 ksuba. And the Gemara says, Iboy b'hai gavya, Iboy b'hai gavya. It seems like whichever ksuba she wants, she's able to collect with. Rashi says, Iboy b'hai gavya bitmiya. Does that make sense to say she can use whatever she wants? Ve'ashtei ksubas v'get kai. We're going on the situation where she has 2 ksubas and just 1 get, so there was 2 ksubos written for 1 marriage. The katani ein la l'ksuba achas. It said she only gets 1 of them. V'lo katani ein la l'ksuba achrona. It doesn't say she gets the latter ksuba. She gets 1 of them. Alma inichal l'mitrav l'kuchas mizvan rishon tarfa. You see, she doesn't have to use the later ksuba. She can use the earlier one if she wants. Maybe that's preferable to her because it has an earlier date and there's a lien on more property, and she can collect from certain lekuchos that she cannot collect with from the second ksuba. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, that she can use whatever ksuba she wants, let us say that that's a refutation of what Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said, Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, because Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said, Shnei shtaros hayotzin bozeh achar zeh, bitel sheni es harishon. Let's say I have 2 shtaros, and they come one after the other, meaning one date is earlier than the other date, so the later shtar is actually mevatel, it actually refutes and nullifies that first shtar, and so then it would come out that you're only allowed to use the second shtar. That would go against what our Mishnah is implying. And the Gemara says, no, la vitmar Allah, but wasn't it said on that statement of Shmuel, that Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said, it was said on that, Amar Rav Papa says, Umoder Rav Nachman, that Rav Nachman admits, the Yosef Bey, dikla l'tosefes kasve, that let's say in that second shtar, he added something, he added a palm tree, there was something in that shtar that was additional, so then he's really just has that second shtar just to add on. And so therefore it's not mevatel the first shtar, it's just adding to the first shtar. So hachanami b'dosef lo, here also you can say he added something in the second ksuba, it doesn't necessarily nullify the first ksuba. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Totzia get uchsuba umisa. Let's say I have a situation where she produces a get, she also produces a ksuba, and also she produces edim that her husband has died. And Rashi over here explains, umisa, she also produces ve'edei misa, again, she produces witnesses that her husband has died. Uba ligbo shtei ksubas, she's producing all of this because she wants to collect 2 ksubas. Achas b'toras gerish, and one she says she's entitled to because there was a divorce. Ve'achas b'toras almanas, and then she's entitled to another one because she's a widow. That's why she's producing again this get and also the ksuba and the fact that her husband has died. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Amud Aleph.